What is preventing Iran from teaming up with its natural resources, a young educated population, and a bucket of opportunities to become the world's largest economy? Iran is a country that holds a total population of around 80 million people. It has a gross domestic product of nearly $1 trillion, and it is among the top countries with the most natural resources. How did it fall from a top-performing economy to a least-performing economy, if not an average one? Hold up. We've got tons of answers and interesting stories for you about Iran and its economy in this video. Please make sure that you stay hooked on it so that you don't miss a glitch about it. Ready? Then here we go. For many folks out there, they would literally complain. It's hard doing business in Iran. Yes, this is actually true, because according to the World Bank, Iran's Ease of Doing Business Index ranks 127th. And according to the Heritage Foundation, Iran's economic freedom score ranked 170th in 2022. The quality and availability of administrative services by the state are constrained by mismanagement, bribery, and rampant corruption issues in powerful institutions, such as a revolutionary guard limit fair competition and entrepreneurial opportunities, notes the Heritage Foundation. Now let's start with what is current of it first. Iran trades mainly with China, India, and the UAE, with around 60% of its exports being oil and gas, which usually go to China and India. As of current, the public debt is low, standing at 40% of GDP. Iran is limited in its ability to borrow abroad by its low credit rating. Its budget is in surplus, amounting to 3% of GDP. Iran has a chronically weak and undercapitalized banking system and a dying public sector. It is considered an energy superpower, with 10% of the world's proven oil reserves making it the fourth largest and 15% of the world's gas reserves making it the second largest producer of gas. Iran's stock rose in a flash in 2020, reaching an all-time high in August, as retail investors piled in, but has since given up parts of its gains. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Iran suffered 129,000 deaths, significantly fewer per capita as compared to the US. Even though Iran's economy has been toiling in an ICU mode, Iran still exports hundreds of thousands of barrels of oil daily, mainly to China, and the weak rial and sanctions have helped its manufacturers to substitute local goods for imported ones. Speaking of sanctions, don't worry, we'll bring it in later in this video. But first, let's handle the basic facts. Iran has at least 21 major universities and close to 5 million undergraduate students. This has been termed an over-education crisis because graduates are still struggling to find employment. 5 of its universities rank among the leading 1,000 in the world, led by the University of Tehran, and even according to the 2022 Global Innovation Index, Iran ranks 53rd among 132 countries, up strongly from 67th in 2020. Iran also ranks among the 30 lower middle-income countries. Its research output has also grown so dramatically that the number of scientific publications increased by 73% between 2011 and 2019. Biotech publications, to be particular, grew by 2/3. Iran's scientists publish more than twice as many articles as their Israeli counterparts, but per capita, Israel leads by a wide margin, ranking 14th in the world compared to Iran's 30th. Until recently, Iran had a thriving startup sector. However, according to the Al Monitor website, the domestic wave of social protests, the government's crackdown, and related internet restrictions have negatively impacted the country's startup scene and will lead to the closure of many innovative entities, and only larger and more consolidated entities will manage to survive. Iran successfully managed to put its first military satellite into orbit in April 2020. The US protested that such launches could boost Iran's ballistic missile technology, enabling potential delivery of nuclear warheads. On December 25th, Zohar Palti, a former intelligence director in Mossad, said Iran were mere days or weeks away from enriching uranium to 90% military-grade levels required for the production of nuclear warheads. This brings us to what I had left hanging, back in this video. Sanctions. What led it to have so many more sanctions than any other nation in the world? First, before we proceed to that, have you heard about boneyards? If so, you can show us a thumbs up. For those who haven't, boneyards are independent trusts that, in theory, work to provide social services to the poorest people in Iran. In practice, they are huge organizations that run a large share of Iran's industries, get funding from the government, don't need to pay taxes, and don't even need to keep any financial records. They also directly report only to the Supreme Leader of Iran, which gives Iran's head of state direct control over organizations that contribute 20% of the country's output, employ 10% of its workforce, and even effectively do anything without leaving a trace. So from the beginning, these boneyards were just tools of corruption. Most of the businesses they run are losing money, but that doesn't matter because they help to keep control over the population. If only 10% is directly dependent on these organizations, they are not going to speak out against a government that has unchecked control over them. At higher levels of influence, boneyards can channel money towards officials through lucrative contracts and jobs that never even need to be reported. This is a good way to keep the Iranian elite happy with the current government. Boneyards can also be used as a threat to keep the few private businesses that exist in Iran in line. Since the businesses that the boneyards operate don't need to pay taxes or even make money, they can easily outcompete private businesses in whatever industries they operate in. So, if private businesses want to keep on making money, they need to keep the government happy. These operations have been terrible for the Iran economy. Apart from the wasted money and open corruption, it has made the investments into Iran look unattractive, because foreign investors will either be afraid of their investments being nationalized and claimed by the state, or outcompeted by boneyards that don't have to play by the rules. Boneyards are semi-religious organizations, and in between funneling money around, they do some good for the poor. Because a lot of these organizations have very little oversight and religious clerics among their top ranks, they have time and again been caught financing internationally targeted military groups, and this is one major reason why Iran was sanctioned. For those who don't understand the meaning of sanctions, these are actually economic restrictions placed on trade and financial flows to countries or organizations for political, social, and military reasons. It's the kind of motivation that differentiates sanctions from trade restrictions. Just to use an example, the USA and Australia have put some trade restrictions against each other. Well, they still retain their friendship. For sanctions, it incorporates a lot of trade restrictions, social restrictions, and incapacitation of the military, and this makes a country look weak economically. A good example is what happened just a year ago, when the EU and the USA imposed sanctions on Russia when it finally invaded Ukraine. Did you see any kind of relationships or leaders of Russia greeting those of the EU or USA? Probably not, because there is a line called enmity that will separate the two sides forever until the issue is resolved. The goal of sanctions is to cripple the country's economy, so they either lose their ability to continue fighting, or they are forced to comply with the terms of the countries imposing the sanctions, or their own people get sick of their declining quality of life and force a change from within. Sanctions are much more effective when the country or group of countries imposing them are large trading blocs on the countries that are the target of the sanctions. In this case, the USA, since it has been a superpower for a long time, holding much influence over other countries, tends to be the one feared the most. Let me tell you, my friend, sanctions from the USA are not a joke. You've seen with your own eyes what happened to Russia. All of its companies, the individuals, and Russia itself were sanctioned by dozens of countries. Iran is not new to this. It actually comes before Russia in terms of sanctions. Basically, all this started when the new government came into power following a revolution in 1979. 7 months after the establishment of a new state, the Iranian hostage crisis unfolded, where 52 US and Canadian diplomats and citizens were captured after the embassy in Tehran was taken over. In response to this kind of aggression, the state was placed under a trade embargo, and $8.1 billion worth of assets were seized. The sanctions were such an effective tool during this moment, because many of the hostages were eventually released after 444 days of capture. Since then, Iran has had sanctions lifted and placed back on it too many times to list, but the general trend is that the country has become more and more cut off from the West. As time went on, Iran continued to attract sanctions because organizations like Boneyards continued to provide support and funding to internationally restricted groups. By taking a closer look at countries like Iran, we can indeed conclude that they do work, especially for longer periods. The most frustrating part of it is that Iran's GDP fell drastically to half of what it had in a decade, $600 billion. It is because of the kind of problems that we have discussed in this video that are drawing Iran back and back. Iran is a country that has a lot of potential to regain back its far-lost victory. With proper management put in place, then there is no reason to doubt that Iran will step up again. What are your thoughts? Please don't forget to leave your suggestions in the comment box below. This brings us to the end of our video today. We hope you guys enjoyed watching this video. Please don't forget to send us those thumbs up, and do us a favor by hitting the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed yet. Thank you for watching, and let's meet in our next video.